Welcome back to the Trailblazher podcast, whether you're watching us on YouTube or tuning in on your favorite platform. Here we are. This is such an incredible episode.
So exciting. So exciting. And
if you haven't heard the news,
we landed Amber Marshall.
We landed an exclusive with Amber Marshall, the lead actor of CBC's Heartland. So we've seen her multiple times now, and we have just been so excited to dive in deeper with Amber and really unravel or unfold and peel back the layers of who she is as a woman, because I think a lot of times her character is so much associated with who she is in her real life. And let us tell you, it is very congruent. Yes, but we wanted to ask Amber some questions that perhaps she hasn't ever been asked. And so we've sat down, we had our almost 2-hour in-person interview for her feature exclusive in our summer issue. We've had 2 photo shoots with her, and then she came to our house for this in-person podcast, which is a first for us.
Yeah, first for anyone to come to our house to do anything related to the magazine. So it's just really cool. And let me tell you, first off, she is a true blue, amazing woman. I think over our interactions with her, we've just been so impressed with her genuine, authentic nature,
groundedness.
You're gonna love the way we peel back the curtain and ask questions about different parts of her life. We talked about Heartland. We talked about Marshall's Country Store, her store of 2 years in Diamond Valley, Alberta here. We talked about her personal life.
Home life.
How do you decorate your house?
Do you love cooking? Are you a morning person or a night person?
Yeah.
So after a couple encounters with her, we walk away feeling so good. And so Amber has a special energy and vibe about her that when you're in her presence, you just feel good. And she is so incredibly grounded as she's navigating through her life and her career and as a woman in entrepreneurship. And I get goosebumps because throughout this interview, you're gonna hear these little gold nuggets of how she operates in the world to give her that groundedness and connectedness to herself. Yeah,
I'm even going to put a name to it. I'm going to say it's Amberisms, because after a while, you just you see that vein of congruency there, and so what you're going to hear through the podcast, what you'll read in the interview in Trailblazher magazine, are the things that shaped her. And I think you're going to find it fascinating because they aren't things that any one of us could not do. But, she's been with Heartland 17 years. The show is #1 longest running popular show in Canadian history.
Yeah.
And so that's half her life. And so you got to figure at 18, she's 35 now, but turning 36 in June, that has had a deep
profound effect
on her as a person.
Yeah.
But also on the fans around the world who absolutely love her. And now we've had insight to understand why.
Yes.
Why she is so sought after. And I'm going to say, you'll hear in the interview as well, while we were at the store for the store interview, some gals came in from New York. And so you'll hear about what was that like?
What was that like?
Why were they there?
So before we dive in, yes, Amber is on the cover of our summer issue 15. And the link will be in the show notes. If you have not bought your summer issue or a subscription, head to our website, because our exclusive on Amber is 12 pages of never before seen photos and interview questions and insight on her. So we're just thrilled with this opportunity to bring you a closer look with Amber Marshall. So enjoy. Before you dive in, did you know that this whole interview with Amber Marshall was 2 hours? So here's what we've done. We're dividing it into part 1 and part 2. You're listening right now to part 1, but you've got to wait until next week for part 2. Or if you want early access, go to our show notes and join our Insiders weekly newsletter, and you're going to get early access to part 2. Sounds good, doesn't it? Amber, welcome to the Trailblazher podcast. We're a little nervous. This is our first in-person interview.
It's nice just to have a casual conversation. I just feel like I'm over for tea. So thank you for having me.
Our absolute
our pleasure.
And
we're
as
so used to Zoom, so this
we
is
are.
really nice.
And our
Yeah.
listeners can't smell and see the amazing charcuterie that we have next to us with the mini donuts. So we've had the pleasure. This is our third time meeting you in person. We've had 2 different photo shoots for your exclusive feature in the magazine. And every time we drive away, Mom and I are just like,
wow,
she's just so salt of the earth. She's so grounded. And so we're just so appreciative of just the opportunity to get to know you a little deeper. And we've got some questions that we just can't wait to dive in, because we can see why you're so adored as the character on Heartland, but also for you as a person. So we're really glad you're here.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think it's really nice too, because a lot of times you don't get that personal one-on-one interaction with someone. You know, you're writing a story about them. You might speak to them on the phone, like you said, Zoom, things like that. But to be able to spend quality time together and just get a feel. And it also helps me get a feel for you guys, right? And kind of where you're coming from and what the direction of your magazine is and everything like that too.
Yeah. Awesome.
Because we didn't have a motive, like we're going to write this story in this specific angle on Amber, and we just wanted to let it unfold. And we've got some cool ideas we want to share with you with what we think we've learned about you. So
yeah, we have some dots that we thought we connected, and we can't wait to get into them. So, Heartland is a true family show. I mean, it's grounded in values of times past, but it's in a very modern context. And you've been with Heartland for 17 years, which is huge. In your words, how would you describe Heartland to somebody who's never watched the show, heard of the show? I think you could probably put a better context to that, content around that than we ever could. So tell us.
It's amazing being with the project for so long, and you kind of, not that my view of the project has changed at all, but I do believe it's because of the wholesome values that Heartland portrays, as well as it's kind of just a breath of fresh air. There's a lot of scripted television shows out there that keep you on the edge of your seat, but sometimes in a way that gives you anxiety. You're watching it and you're like, what's going to happen next? Okay, now I have to take a relax before I go to the next episode because my heart's racing. And the thing I love about Heartland, and that so many people have shared with me over the years, is that it's just like, it's comfortable. It's sitting down on a nice couch with your best friend, sharing a cup of tea or whatever it might be. And you don't feel that anxiety. You feel, in fact, the opposite. You feel a release of everything, all the tension, all of the day's anxieties and stresses just seem to melt away. And I think that that's why so many people have gravitated to the show, because in today's society, when it's so hustle and bustle and everybody's rushing around to get somewhere, the last thing you want at the end of the day is to come home and watch a show that gives you all those same anxieties. And so I do feel that Heartland, it's kind of touched people around the world for that reason. And I know that there's been a lot of people that have been coming out of a sickness or an ailment, and they say, I don't want to watch anything else. I just want to sit there and watch Heartland because it makes me feel good and it makes me feel inspired and positive, and that I can get through anything. And I think that that's really, really what the show is about.
It's got such a groundedness to it. And I'm sitting here, I can hear the intro music too, and just this, like the horses in the beginning, and not like you said, even some intros to other shows already before it's even begun, kind of hyped up or in like a heightened state.
Yeah.
That's definitely not what any of us need, as our lives are so busy and full. And so Heartland even has those quiet moments, there's no filler, and it's just so focused on the relationships, which I think people are craving, like that connection. They witness that on screen and they feel it.
And the simplicity of it too. I think a lot of people, they're stuck in this never ending kind of fast-paced life where they're busy at home, they go to work, they're busy at work. And there is something about horses that we all know kind of grounds us and brings us back to our true roots and that simplicity of life. And I believe that watching Heartland, seeing those connections, seeing the influence of a horse really helps ground you just watching the show.
Yeah.
And that's something that, you don't feel a lot when you're watching television. You don't get that same just, oh, okay, this is nice. I feel comfortable.
Can you give us kind of the pathway that brought you to the show?
I know you've been asked a million times.
It wasn't really a direct line. Like I I never in a million years as a 5-year-old girl would have ever thought that I was going to be on television. That wasn't really something that crossed my mind until later in my teenage years. I guess that's not really later in life. I was 18 years old when I got Heartland. And I remember I was in that transition where I didn't quite know what I wanted to do with my life. And it had been the road leading up to it kind of prepared me unknowingly for that role. I started riding when I was 5, loved horses. I was a horse crazy girl. I was able to get my own horse when I was 11, 12 years old. And at that same time, I was involved in acting. Now, I never really thought of it as a career. It was just something I did for fun. So at that time, horses and acting were both very prevalent in my life. And that was at 12 years old. And then throughout high school, I thought I was going to be a veterinarian. So I worked in a vet clinic, and I would walk from high school every day and go and work at the clinic in the evenings. And I was like, this is really cool. This is what I want to do. And then over the course of my 4 years in high school and working at the clinic, I thought, it's not really what I thought it was. I'm not just helping animals. It's more about navigating relationships with people. And so, when you're young and you're like, I'm going to be a vet because I just want to save animals. And then you realize, okay, well, maybe it's shifted a little bit. It's not quite that. And so then I started thinking, well, maybe I want to dip back into the acting side of things. Is there something that I could do long term with this? And so I had graduated high school and I applied for the film and television program at Ryerson University in Toronto. And I'm an Ontario girl. I grew up in Ontario. And so that was my thought. I'm going to try this out. And it wasn't something, again, that I thought of as a future career. I was like, here's an opportunity for me to go get a degree in something that I love, and who knows where it will take me. And so I was accepted to the program. And right before I was able to go, I got the audition for Heartland and was taken out to Alberta to film the pilot. And that's one interesting thing about the world of film and television is that when you film a pilot episode, you have no idea if it's going to be picked up or not. So I had done a few in the past that never went anywhere. So I was kind of thinking, I'm like, this is a really cool role and it's very much me. But at the same time, I'm not going to get too excited about it because then I'll just be let down when it doesn't go anywhere. And here we are 17 years later. But so it was kind of this winding, twisting road that landed this perfect audition, and I got the role. So I was there for the pilot, and then they said, you know what, we're going to pick this up for season 1. And again, not knowing that there would be life after season 1. Like this is something that the world of film and television is very unpredictable. And that going into it. I would go to 25 auditions before I booked one. So I was always just thinking, okay, it's just another audition. It's nothing to get excited about.
Yeah, don't get your hopes up.
Yeah. And I was that person. I would do my best. I would go into the audition and then I would forget about it. Clean wipe it out of my memory. Because I'm like, I don't want to be dwelling upon something that is maybe a 1 in 25 chance of me getting. And so it was really cool just to be able to get that first season under our belt. And then after that, I kind of went back into the mode of, okay, so what am I going to do? Because that was great. We did season 1. I was now back in Ontario thinking, what's next? And so I went back to work at the vet clinic that I had worked in for years. And I'm like, I got to kind of replan because I'd already given up my spot at Ryerson. So I didn't have schooling to go to next. I'm like, okay, so do I want to apply again? But are we going to go back for season 2? It was very like, what do I do? And so I ended up working in the clinic for that year. And then we were renewed for season 2. And at that point, that's when I said, you know what? I love Alberta. I feel like this is my home. And I was at that point in my life where I didn't really have anything tying me down. I didn't have someone or a specific career or anything like that. And I thought, this is the time. If I'm going to try something new, if I'm going to make a change, now's the time to do it. So in season 2, I relocated full time to Alberta and I rented an acreage and it felt right. And I had some chickens and a dog and, it felt like home right away. So then at that point, I was like, I really hope the show keeps going because I love where I'm living. I love the people that I work with and fortunately, people loved the show. So here we are.
What were your first impressions of Alberta? Because we're Albertans and I've lived overseas and moved back. And I think I didn't really appreciate the spirit in Alberta until coming back and missing it. And because there's something special in Alberta. And so what for you was it that made it special? Or what did you feel when you were like, this is where I'm meant to be?
I felt like I was home. Like, honestly, it sounds so cliche, but there is a welcoming atmosphere here. And I don't know really what it is. It's definitely part of the people and the atmosphere. You arrive in Calgary, you have the mountains, and you have it's just this sense of everyone wants to invite you over for dinner. Like, they want you to be part of their family and they want to help and support you. And I love that feeling. And I found that I didn't really know what that was, or I couldn't put a label on it until I went back somewhere else. Like you said, you travel back and you go, oh, that's what it is. There's this neighborly sense of community and family and friendship that's out here. And it's unspoken. It's not something that people are like, yeah, we're so friendly. But it's just this warmth. And not only that, I feel like it's a sort of like Heartland. It's kind of this relaxed pace. Whereas in Ontario, and you notice it being here and then going back, because I still have family in Ontario, so I'm back there quite often. And it's this rush. The pace is different. So you go there and I don't even like driving there because everybody's cutting you off and honking their horn, and you don't notice it until you haven't been there for a while. And so I find that here it's like, no, like I'm going the speed limit, I'm good, and nobody cares. Whereas there it's like, meh, get out of the way. Like, there's just this different atmosphere. And I think that's what immediately drew me to Alberta was vistas are beautiful, like everywhere you look. And maybe that's part of it. Maybe that's why people feel so relaxed, because you can be having a bad day and then you look at the mountains and horses in the field and whatever it might be. But I think it's just this overall sense of family, community, and welcomingness that I felt right away. And it just instantly, I was like, everything I love to do, horses, being outdoors, being in the mountains, all of that is so accessible. It's right out my back door. Yeah. So I think that's something that drew me in the beginning. And then after being here, I'm like, I can't imagine living anywhere else.
Yeah. Well, and probably coming from Ontario, seeing the mountains probably for the first time. That was friends that come out for the first time, and they're just, it's incredible.
And we're used to them. We forget that.
Yeah.
That we have, like you said, the vistas.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that you need to travel. You need to visit other places to appreciate your own home. Right. And for me, and some people, I have friends that they've moved out to Alberta for work, and then they end up moving back to Ontario because it is too slow paced for them. They love the hustle and bustle. So it's like, it really depends who you are as a person. And I think that that's what makes up a community too, because if you vibe with that, if you feel connected to that energy, then you're going to stay. That feels right to you. But if you don't, you're not going to be comfortable. You're going to want to go back to the energy and the atmosphere that you feel the most comfortable in. So I think that's what makes each place unique, is that like-minded people gravitate towards that.
Well, that really goes really nicely into the next question, which I know when we talked for the magazine interview that you talked about the Heartland crew and cast have become family. And we know that who we become in the world is through nature, like the characteristics and traits we come into the world with, and nurture what we're exposed to and surrounded by. And so you started the show at 18. You'll be turning 36 in June. So that's half your life. I'd like to know, how has being part of Heartland shaped you into the person and the woman you are today? Because your circumstance is very unique. And I think that there's probably some interesting things that have developed in you because of this unique situation.
Oh, 100%. And I feel personally, I think that your 20s are your biggest period of growth as a human. They're your biggest learning experiences. Who you really define yourself as, I think, is developed in your 20s. Because that's sort of the time when you're just flying from the nest, right? You're just leaving the coop and you're like, okay, so now I'm on my own. Who am I and who do I want to be? And like you said, that the nurturing of your past and everything that you've learned up until that point really defines who you are. But then it's when you're set free and you go, okay, so what now? And you're not influenced by family and some of the things that you were influenced your whole life up until this point. And for me, it was even more dramatic because I was so far from home. And I think a lot of people experience this when they go away for university because it's the same kind of thing. You know, you're living in residence or you're living away from home. You're now with this whole new group of people that you might not have known any of them from your past. And here you are building relationships, putting all those tools into play that you've been given your whole life up until now and saying, okay, how do I use these tools, right? What do I do to become the best version of myself or whatever it is you think that what path you're on? So for me, it was slightly different than that university experience because instead of just being thrown into a pool of a whole bunch of like-minded people that were in the same spot, like what I mean by that is a whole bunch of 18-year-olds that are just leaving their house for the first time, I'm now put into a group of people of all ages, of all experiences of life, of all different family backgrounds and things like that. So now I'm not just with a bunch of young people. I'm with people that have so much worldly knowledge and families and all different types of things that I can absorb and go, wow, I love what they're doing. And maybe I'm going to shy away from what they're doing. And, you have such a unique selection of people, but they're also all there for the same common goal as you are. We just want to make a great show, right? So I think that's that common thread that brought everyone together. It's like we all have an artistic background. We all just really want this to work. But at the same time, some of us have been doing it for 25 years and some of us, this is our first year. And I think that the really unique thing was how the cast and crew were all from different parts of Canada too, right? So it's like you don't just have this group of people that are all local or all from different areas. You've got your cast that was from anywhere from Vancouver to the East Coast. And then you have your crew that was mostly Alberta based, but some were from Toronto, Vancouver. So you have so many different types of mindset too, right? Because like we talked about before, I believe that your atmosphere, where you grow up, the place that you're living in really sets the tone. And so it 100%, it shaped me in ways that I could have never imagined. And I think that having the responsibility of being a role model in my 20s was really important to me as well. Because your 20s too, I think, is when you're like testing the boundaries, right? You're like, oh, like, what do I want to do? Who do I want to hang out with? Do I want to party? Do I want to do this? And I think that for me, it was like, that's not really who I am anyway. Like I never had an urge to go out and party all the time. That's just, I would rather be at home with my animals. And, I was the first person as part of the cast to go out and get a cat the first week we were filming because I was like, it's so lonely. Like I need an animal. And I was always like, aren't you guys lonely? Like you live out, and they're like, yeah, it's fine. We don't want that responsibility. And I was like, but it also gave me that excuse. I was like, sorry guys, I have to go home and feed my cat. And it was true. Like I would most nights rather hang out with my cat than be out in a party setting. But I think that really helped kind of shape my 20s and figure out who I wanted to be. Because not only that, there wasn't the peer pressure that I think a lot of people get in that college setting or university setting. Because it's like, no, what, you got nothing better to do? Come on out. Like, what are you doing? Like, whereas I didn't get that because we were all of different ages and different stages in our life, right? Some were married, some had their kids with them, some were like just leaving home for the first time like me. So that was really important in helping develop kind of my moral compass, I guess, and being able to lean on the people that I needed to lean on when I was uncomfortable or wasn't quite sure of what was going on. I also had a lot of crew members that were like, hey, like, come on over for a Sunday dinner and, just kind of take me under their wing because it's like, oh, you are away from your family and I'm sure you're lonely sometimes. And another interesting thing is that when you work on a film set, you're working 12 to 14 hours a day plus. So you don't have a lot of time to get into trouble, right? Like you don't have a lot of time to go out because you're tired. You want to just go home and go to bed. And you're waking up at 5 a.m. So you don't want to be out late. So I think for me that was really a good way to start my adult life because it was part of a very wholesome group of people. And I never felt like I was missing out on anything either. You know, whereas if you're in a different setting and all your friends are going out every night, you'd be like, whereas this, everybody was just tired at the end of the day. So you didn't feel like you're missing out.
I think it's so fascinating that, like, for you coming from where you came from, because when fame or like that a high public life comes to some people, they don't have the skills to really cope with it, right? And I just love hearing you talk about it, because I just feel like fame picked the right gal. Like you had these skills to handle this, and not only just handle it, but just do it so well. Because like you said, you are such a role model, and you've just so beautifully stepped into this role. And, you know, young girls, people around the world look up to you and love to hear about your life. So I just think that's just so cool to be sitting talking about the characteristics that make you who you are, to have, like, it's a perfect match to.
Yeah, you didn't have to rebel against anything.
No, exactly.
Revolt or.
Yeah. I feel like Alberta really protected me in that too. And I'm not just saying that because I love Alberta and I'm an Alberta advocate, but I think that it would have been a bit of a different all-around vibe if I was doing the same show in a different city.
Yeah.
And especially LA. LA has a way of really putting pressure on people, but through the media too. Like, that's one really nice thing about Canada, is we don't have the same media relations as a lot of talent has to deal with in the States. Because and now with social media, just your everyday person is experiencing it. You know, there's lots of things that get put up that are not true, that are, you know, photos that are completely artificially created, and things that you're like, this isn't even, like, how can people believe this? Yeah. And it's taken to a whole another level in some areas. But I find with Alberta, I don't know if it's just people have their own thing going on and they don't worry about it as much. They're not as involved in the everyday life of, what did Amber have for breakfast today? Did you see? And it's like, you know, like, maybe they're out calving cows in the field and they don't have time to look that up. I don't know what it is. But I just find that there's this culture of need to know, and they need to, and especially with celebrities. And I don't know what makes celebrities sit up on a different pedestal. Like, that's always been strange to me. I was in actually recertifying my fire extinguishers and stuff for the store the other day, and lovely gal up front, she's like, "Why are you doing that? You have people for this. Like, why would you be here?" And I'm like, I am the people. Like, I don't know. I don't have people for this. Like, you know, it's my store. I'm doing these things. And I think that there's a lot of community that really looks at actors as a different type of person. But we're not. Like, we're just doing a job that's slightly different than a different job. Yeah. But, you know, tomorrow I could be working in a bar. I could be like, it's funny to me how this occupation has been given so much glam.
Yes.
Which is funny, because a lot of people who end up being able to come to set and see firsthand what we do, they're like, "Oh, this is what you do all day?" We're like, we had a totally different vision. Like, I thought you, like, you know, got to sit in nice chairs and have a big fancy trailer and be fed grapes or like whatever it might be. And I'm like, no, like, we're out freezing our butts off or sweating or working long hours. And yeah, there are some luxuries. Like, we get fed our meals, which I love. And I always, when we're not filming, I'm like, man, I'm hungry. I got to go feed myself. You know? So things like that, yes, but those have also been put into place because we're working 14 hours a day. And so jobs like, I guess it would be compared to guys who work up on the rigs that are there for long hours. They also get fed. Same idea. And people don't look at that as glamorous, you know, but it's like, if you really kind of put the time into seeing the work that goes into these shows and productions, it's not all that glamorous. You know, the final product, yes, of course. And when you see us on the red carpets and the different events and galas, for sure. But the everyday of it, it's no different than many other jobs out there.
Yeah. At what part in your career did you become, like, famous? Like, I hate saying that, but like, when was it, like, for you? You're like, oh, okay, like, getting recognized. Like,
there is a very specific moment when I realized that the show was probably going to be a success. Okay. I was in season 1. And we went to the Royal Agricultural Winter Fair, and they had asked us to come do a signing. Now, the show had just aired. Like, it had just aired in October of that year, and this was now November. So there'd only been 4 or 5 episodes that had played. Heartland was a book series, or is a book series, prior to the show. So it already had a fan following. So there was a lot of people that were like, they made a show? So they tuned in right away because they were already involved in the stories. They were invested in that book series. So they started watching. So there was already kind of a pre-created fan base before we even aired. So I just remember I went to the Royal with Graham, who played Ty, and we walked around the corner. They're like, you're going to be doing the signing here. Here's your table, all that kind of stuff. And we came around the corner, and there was a lineup all the way down the hallway. And I looked at him, and I was like, is this for us? He goes, I think so. We've only had 4 episodes on TV. And it's like, yeah. But because of the book series, there was a lot of people that were already invested. They're like, we are so happy you guys made this into a series. This was my very favorite book series as a kid growing up, and this is so cool. So we got to meet so many people, and hearing the stories that very first season, going, okay, I think we have something here, because not only did they enjoy the book series, but they've now watched the first 4 or 5 episodes and really enjoyed that. So it's like, okay, we know now, we have a gauge of how we're doing. And even though we had no idea how many seasons, I remember it was that moment when I was like, I think we got something here.
In my former work, I was a life skills and career coach, and I used to spend my time helping people figure out what they wanted to do with their lives. For some people, it's a real struggle to figure that out, because I think somewhere along the way they get disconnected from who they are. They can't seem to figure out what their natural talents are, and then how to shape that into a career or a business, if that's the route they go. So you've had a love of horses and acting from a very young age, and you've had the opportunity to combine them. So I'm just wondering if you can tell our listeners, how does it feel to live out your life immersed in these 2 passions? Because we still know so many people who are searching. So
asking bigger questions.
Yeah. What do I need to do with my life? And so you've got this heartland and this lifestyle. How does it feel living it?
Like, it must feel like you won the lottery.
Oh, yeah. And work to me has never felt like work, ever. Yeah. And that's with everything I've done. You know, I said that I worked in a vet clinic through high school. And I remember a lot of my fellow classmates, they were working in fast food restaurants and, you know, kind of the traditional teenage jobs. And they were always grumpy about it. Oh, I got to go to work tonight. Like, I'm going to smell like deep fryer and I can't come out there because I got to do the night shift or whatever it is. And I just remember always kind of smiling to myself, being like, I have the best job ever, because I loved working in the vet clinic. Yeah. You know, I was doing all these unique jobs. I felt very proud of what I was doing. And I think that that's something too, is that you should love what you're doing, but you should also be proud of the work you're doing. And I think a lot of people get put into a position where, yeah, it's good pay, or it might be good people they work with, but they're not proud of the work they're doing. And that makes you discouraged. It makes you not want to go through with it. So I think first and foremost, you have to see the vision of the company you're with or whatever you might be doing and agree with it. Your values and principles have to align. And if they do, then you can start to find the fun in it and things that really kind of spark your passions. But that's one thing that I'm so lucky to be given this role that has all of that alignment. But then I also think, okay, but if I wasn't, let's say I was working the vet clinic and then someone said, hey, I'm going to pay you X amount to come over and work in whatever it might be. If I did that and I didn't feel my principles aligned with that company, I wouldn't stay there, right? There's always, and I think that's what so many people struggle with. It's like they just can't find that thing that really calls to them. But sometimes you just have to look at the bigger picture. And I can only say so much, right? But it's like, I believe that you put it out there and you'll be able to find a way to what you really want to do. And I say that with anything. Like, I'm going to use a very obscure analogy right now, but it's like all day long, I'll be like, really want a brownie today. Oh, I really want a brownie. I'm going to get a brownie today. I'm going to have a brownie today. And then I show up here and there's brownie. Right? Like, it's like you put it out in the universe and you put that positivity throughout the universe. And I believe that it comes back. And not everyone can see that, because there's a lot of people, and there's a lot of people in my life that will say, well, that's never going to happen, or I'm never going to get there, or I'm never, like, I'm all bad luck just comes to me. By saying that again and again, you're just pulling all of that negativity into your life. So when there's that shining thing that you might love, you don't see it because you're in that dark cloud. And so I find, like, people always ask me, like, well, why are you here? How did you get here? It's like, I don't close doors. I'm always looking for the open door. And if you walk through and you don't like what you see, you can go to the next one. But if you don't walk through that door, how are you going to know? Right? It's like, and I think that a lot of time it's our own fear and our own insecurity that holds us back. And if you just open that up and try it out, you never know what you're going to find.
Have you always been so self-assured and self-aware? Or is that something that it's hard to talk about ourselves that way.
I believe I've always had a really good moral compass. And I mean, everyone that goes through their teenage years is always going to be swayed in different directions. But I think that for me, being accepted wasn't as important as knowing what felt right. So there was a lot of situations where it was like, if you don't do this, I'm never going to be your friend, or whatever it might be. And I'd be like, well, then I don't want your friendship. Like, I think that I was never at a point where I was afraid of being alone or being afraid of being ridiculed for something that I felt was right. And that's probably kind of what guided me through that, because if you're always thinking, well, but if I don't do this, what are they going to think of me? Or if I do this, what are they going to think of me? It's like, if you believe that it's right deep down, then that's the way you should go. And you'll find that when you start doing that, you start actually following what is in your heart, those people kind of come out of the woodwork and they're like, oh, yeah, I like that too. And the people that were so against it, they just fade away. And it's great, because then all of a sudden you're surrounded with people that are like-minded and that share those passions. And that's really what life's about. You want to be with people that build you up and that help drive you in the direction that you want to go, as opposed to being with people that are going to judge you for something that inside is what you really want.
Erin and I were reflecting when we first chatted with Katie, your publicist, about featuring you in the magazine. She said, I want you to know that Amber's fans are really dedicated and loyal. I said, okay. And we thought we could talk about, I wonder what that looks like. So I wanted to bring up the story when we were in your store 2 weeks ago. And
for the photo shoot.
Photo shoot. And these two gals came in and they're very quiet, just walking around, looking at things.
However, you could see them like eyes bulging, looking at you. I'm shopping, and then looking at you. So I just wanted to add that. Yeah.
So I don't know who the first person was to talk with them. I know I chatted a bit because I was kind of sitting near the till in the store. And so they said that they came from New York and they came to come to the store. And it was their hope that you could possibly be there, but they were just happy to be there. And I remember looking over at Erin and I was thinking, okay, so this is what Katie's talking about, because I don't know anyone that I would fly across the country to go to their store. Some locals told them where the Heartland set was. They drove out and found it, and they were going to go to Banff and Lake Louise and all the rest of it.
But they came for you.
Yeah. And I was within earshot. You did a selfie with them, and they kind of had a few moments to chat with you. And they said to you, because I could hear it all, they said, well, we're in the equine business, and we just want to thank you for all that you do. And I thought, what? Like, what does this mean? Like, it just sent me on this, this deep dive. But we talked in the magazine interview about the healing aspects of the show. And I have some reviews from online that I'm going to share in a minute. But in your words, what is that healing vibe, that attractor factor? Because I've never heard or seen of that before. So you're living it. What is it like?
I think that anyone who has had the pleasure to be around horses and be in the company of horses, whether you're riding them or just hanging out in a field with them, understands that there is something about the presence of a horse that makes you feel like everything else melts away. And I don't believe that's just because I love horses. I think that there is something actually to that. They are a very calm and kind natured animal. And that it doesn't matter how you're feeling in a day. If you come and you put your hand on the neck of a horse, you instantly just feel, even just saying that, I can feel this through my body. That's just this like deep breath. And I believe that's why a lot of people do meditation, do different forms of meditation. You know, if you live in the city and you don't have access to that, then you can do those breathing exercises and have someone kind of talk you through it. And however your form of meditation is, that's that same result of letting everything go, all the stresses, everything in the world that, you know, is sitting on your shoulders is completely released by the presence of a horse.
Yeah.
And I'm so fortunate to be able to have horses at my house, because if I have a stressful day, if it's been a long day, whatever it might be, because it doesn't matter how relaxed you are as a person. It doesn't matter if you have the best job in the world, a great family, great friends, doesn't matter. Everybody experiences stress of some kind, anxiety of some kind. And to be able to go and just let it be released is something that I wish for everybody. You know, whatever it is that makes you just feel that sense of, I hope that you have that in your life. And, you know, some people have that with their dog. They come home, they've had a stressful day, and their dog puts their head on their lap and they instantly just feel that release. And so for those who have never been around a horse, or that have been around a horse, I believe that watching the show gives them a sense of release from afar. And I know it sounds crazy, but for me, and I still get this way, and I have horses in my backyard, but when I watch horses on TV, I feel that same release. There's something about, you know, a herd of horses galloping across the field, and you just feel it in you. You feel this sense of, and it's this calming, but it's also this sense of assurance. It's this sense of grounding. It's the sense of, yes, I can take that on. I can do it. And you get all of those feelings from just one simple visual. And for me, when I go out after a long day and I sit on the fence and watch my horses and they're just grazing, or they might be running around and playing with each other, there is nothing more centering in that moment than that. You know, watching that and absorbing that and feeling that. I don't think about anything else. I'm just there. I'm connected with them. And I feel in that moment, I'm more connected with myself and what I really want.
That is so cool. Yeah, that is so cool.
I'm just gonna like take the liberty and read a couple of these because it was after that, and this will go into the next question. I said to Aaron, "There's a dot in here that we need to
Connect.
So this is just a couple of them in no particular order. This one said, "I love this show so much. It freaking changed my life. I was so depressed for a really long time. I had nothing left to do. But then I found Heartland while skimming through it. I thought it'd be pointless, but as it turns out, it was life-changing. Amy was an inspiration for me. She taught me that even in the toughest points in our lives, we have to keep going no matter how we feel. And now I'm a happy teen, like everyone else. I ride horses for fun. It helps me loosen up and relax. And turns out I got happier and found a lifelong hobby. This show is truly incredible." And then there's this other one. "I'm from the USA and absolutely love, love, love Heartland. It's such an uplifting and inspiring story. I suffer from service-related PTSD and bipolar disorder, and this show has gotten me through some really bad times, and it's shown me that I can get through anything with the help of my amazing son. Can't really say I have a favorite character because they're all so amazing, but if I had to say, it would probably be Amy. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for giving me strength and courage to realize I'm not alone in this journey." And then here's one more. I have a whole bunch, but when I think of this TV show, well, in one of the reviews I read that the show is really geared for kids, teens, or tweens, or whatever that means. I turned 71 a few months ago, and I can never miss those Sunday nights. And if I do, I'm a fan of CBC Gem, so I can watch Heartland wherever and whenever I want, and I never miss an episode. This show is amazing. I've even traveled to Alberta and visited the set in High River. I got to be an extra on one of the shows, and even a fan when they shot the series when Georgie won the fall finale. Yes, I am a fan, and so far I think I've watched Heartland episodes from beginning to end at least 3 or 4 times. Thank you, CBC, for producing Heartland, and I really hope you will continue to carry this show until my eyes are so dim I can't see anymore. And then, okay, just one more. Growing up, I loved horses, and I've always wanted one, but since we can't afford one, Heartland has been amazing when I watch it. It makes me feel like I'm there and part of the family. I love that there is always a problem, and the whole family tries to help and fix it. And I have to say, Heartland shows the true meaning of family, friends, and relationships. When you watch Heartland, you feel you belong, because almost every problem is something you might be able to relate to. And that's what makes Heartland so special. It's passionate, relatable, inspiring, and above all, real, not fake, like you know they're acting. You don't realize they're acting, because to me, it's so raw, and I love that about the series. So thank you. So, that's really just a sampling. There was, like, I could have scrolled and copied and pasted and whatnot. So it's kind of this anchoring thing for people. But I since you said in the interview that it's healing, I had to dig in and see, like, in what ways, and all the rest of it.
Your heart
Yeah.
must be so full, like, to be a part of that. Like, that's just such a way beyond just like, if I feel good about that. Like, you're part of
Yeah.
something so
Something
much
bigger than
bigger.
yourself.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And we talked a little bit earlier about how you need to be proud of the work you're doing, right? You need to be doing something that aligns with your own moral compass. And that's why the show, I believe, has been a show that people want to come back to year after year after year, because there's really no feeling like that when you get to read, those comments and things that Heartland has really been so impactful on so many people's lives. And to be able to be part of that change for someone, for hundreds of people around the world. And it's just a very unique experience. And not everybody recognizes it right away, too. And I find that there's been a lot of crew members that have been on the show and then they go to a different show and they come back and they say, I never realized what a gem this was. I never realized how they said, I've been on, big shows like The Revenant and all different things that are filmed in this area. I've worked with big Hollywood names and all this. And soon as I say I work in the film and television industry, instantly everyone's like, but have you worked on Heartland? And they're like, yeah, but I've also worked on this, and this. Yeah, we don't care about those. Have you worked on Heartland? How was it? How was the cast? Because what you described there, the rawness of it, the realism of it, the fact that we all feel like we're really a family and that we are connected, I think that resonates with a lot of people.
Where does that stem from? Because that's really, it's the culture of it, with all of you showing up to work every day to do, like, where does that come from? Is that, 'cause that would be an energy that you feel walking on set, and you feel this love and camaraderie. Like, where does that stem from?
I think from the very beginning, when there was no egos, everybody was like, we enjoy this project. This is a lot of fun. We're coming together to do something we love. And that never changed. It never got to a point where someone was like, I'll just be in my trailer. I don't want to deal with this. Or, nobody ever developed specific egos of I'm better than this, or I could be doing something else with my time. And so I think that that's what's kept the cast so close, is that it's like, no, we are a family and we're all in this together and we know what we're doing. Like, yes, we always call it a well-oiled machine. We've been doing this so long that we know when we get to set what's expected of us, what we're going to do, but we also understand each other. And I think knowing how everybody works and functions and ticks and the things that they like and the things that they don't like is so important when you're working with a team. Because, like, I know certain things, like, I'm like, oh, we're not going to want to do too many takes in this scene because Chris Potter's shoulder has had some trauma, so we can't throw the rope 7 times. Right? So that going into it. So you're like, okay, so I have to really know my lines and we have to really rehearse and we have to be ready so that it's not going to be again and again and again. Or if we come in and there's a horse that we know has to do something specific, it's like all of the cast members will get together ahead of time and say, let's just run our dialogue as much as we can so that when we get into that moment, we know we're not going to have to ask this horse to do something time and time again. We'll be on our game. And just knowing little subtleties, like who likes to run lines first and who wants to be just in their own space. And things like that when you walk onto a new set with actors that you've never met before, you don't really know. You're like, okay, like I would love to run lines, but should I approach them or should I leave them alone? Or are they getting into their zone? Or you don't know those things. Whereas when I show up on the set of Heartland, I know exactly what to expect from everyone. And I also know who I can go and joke around with and who I should just kind of let do their thing. Or if there's a specific scene that I'm like, oh, I'm having a lot of trouble with this dialogue, who can I go and talk to work it through and to help me make sense of it and that kind of thing as well.
So that's the integrity and the authenticity of the relationships are real. Therefore, what gets translated into the show is that relatability
and the caring,
authenticity, and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
So this is where we kind of dive into this aha we think we've had. So we'll bring it on you. So, since we did your interview, but, and talking with Katie weeks ago, we've been thinking and pondering about understanding you because we wanted the article in the magazine, to be something maybe new or fresh or in depth in a way, maybe that you haven't been interviewed before, because we're looking at it from the perspective of Trailblazher, right? So some of the things we noticed, you're very grounded, you're very present moment focused, very calm. And so I was looking through articles written by other magazines or publications. We both watched your Instagram lives that you've had in the last month. And just the other day, we listened to the podcast interview from last September that you did with Graham Wardle, your husband, on the show. And it was really funny because as soon as I hit press stop, Erin blurted out, "She lives like a horse." Like that is her internal operating system. And I said, that's it. I think that's what we've been trying to understand. Because let me give you the backstory and understanding this.
No, I love this already. I'm invested.
So a few years ago, Erin and I took an equine-assisted learning certification. I think it's about 8 years ago now. So we know a little about the nature of horses, that they're sensitive to energy, that they cue into body language.
In the present moment.
Yeah, very present moment. They don't hold grudges, like deal with something, move on.
They'll move into pleasure or what feels good and simply move away from what's not or what doesn't feel good.
Yeah. So we were listening to you describe some of the horsey things to Graham in the interview.
Because he was prying, not prying. You guys were engaging in a conversation about like spirituality and how do you make choices and like digging into like deeper levels of self-awareness. And you just so succinctly answer the questions like, well, if it's this, it's this. And if it feels good in the moment, I walk right in.
Yeah, I remember using, wasn't it like a hot water and a cold water or something analogy? I forget what I used with him because Graham's very visual. Like, and I know this about him because I've known him for 17 years. And it's like, sometimes I find there's certain people in my life that are searching up here when they should just be looking in front of them. Right. And they're like, where is it? Where is the answer? Where is it? It's right there. Like, does this tea taste good? No, then don't drink it. Does it, like it's just
that grounded nature that you have. So
I love that analogy because you're right. It's like, I think sometimes as humans, we tend to overthink everything. We're like, well, that's so simple. That can't be the answer. Like, should I drink this tea? It tastes good. Nope, something's wrong. Like, why does it taste good? And it's like, sometimes you just have to go into that. It's like, if this feels right, do it. If it doesn't feel right, don't do it. Because that's your moral compass saying, because humans.
But that's what a horse would do, right?
Because they're still connected with that. Yeah. Whereas I feel like humans, there is so much out there right now as far as like, listen to this, do this. You should be doing this. Why aren't you doing this? You shouldn't be happy if you're doing this or not doing this. There is so much external noise in the world. And horses and animals don't have that. So when there's a decision to be made, they're reactive. Does it feel good? Okay, we move into it. Does it feel bad? We move out of it. But humans have become so desensitized to that moral compass. And that's why I always say, I'm like, use the gut check. Does it feel right? Then that's your body telling you that it's right. If you feel like some people, they say they get that little tingling sense on the back of their neck when something's, yes, that's your body saying, warning, warning. But a lot of times we just ignore that. And so for me, I've just really leaned into that. I've said, okay, like I know what to do deep down, but sometimes your brain gets in the way and says, nah, that's fine. You don't need to worry about that. Or yeah, maybe you should worry about that. And so I think that that's just what I try to tell people is like, you know what you should do. You're just blocking it out by all the other things people tell you.
So how did you stay connected to it?
I don't know.
You see, and that's where we thought it was interesting because you talked about going and sitting in the field after a long day of filming and just sitting and watching your horses. And I've listened. You talked about you don't hold grudges. So there's a part of you that we see that is primally connected to that intrinsic instinctual nature. And I'm wondering, just in the moment, like maybe you've never had this thought before, but is it because of how your character in the show interacts with horses, and then you move into your life and it's one and the same?
Yeah.
Like you don't have that, jarring kind of disconnect.
Yeah.
So how do you think you've stayed connected?
I love what you said. I lived my life like a horse because I feel like I am very much a part of my herd. And my herd consists of horses, cows, dogs, cats, chickens. Like it's not just specifically one type of animal. And I find that I learn so much from each one of them and each one of the interactions they have with each other. And then also interspecies as well. Yeah. How do the dogs react to the horses and vice versa? And I'm somewhere in the middle where we always say humans are like the smarter species or that, and I'm like, are we really? Because we're all searching for something we can't find where a horse is happy eating grass. But I do think that energy that I set really makes an impact on the animals all interacting as well. Because animals they want someone to kind of be like, hey, this is right, this is wrong. Sort of like humans are constantly looking for, what do I do? Like, help me. I don't know what to do. Animals are the same way. And each one of them has a strength or a weakness. Some dogs that I've had are very much leaders and they want to be the alpha. And it takes everything I have to keep being like, no, that's me. You're not the alpha. And some of them are just like, I'm sorry, just tell me what to do. Right? They don't have that in them. And I think that for humans too, it's the same thing. There's some humans that are born natural leaders and they're really on a mission to do just on a certain path. Whereas some humans are born and they're like, that's too much work. I want to just I'll follow you. You pick the path and I'll follow. Just like horses on the trail. There's some of my horses that want to lead and there's some of my horses that just are like, nah, they can go ahead. I'll just hang back here. And it's when you understand the dynamic of a herd of horses, a pack of dogs, a bunch of chickens. I don't know what you call a bunch of chickens. It's a flock of chickens. A gaggle of geese. We could go on forever. I think that you start to understand yourself and the relationships around you better because you can pick, everybody has those subtleties that they put out and you can kind of tell where you sit within your friend group, within your family, within your workplace, any dynamic where there are humans interacting. You're going to see those same similarities in a herd of horses or in any group of mammals or anything really that's going to interact.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe you've just never been disconnected from that. Like you've been surrounded and created a life around you to ensure that you are grounded and have stayed connected to you. Because I think like we've after the both photo shoots, we're in the car talking about it and it feels your energy. It feels so good to be around. And I think seeing you demonstrate that natural ability, knowing that you are connected to that part of you is a reminder for everyone around you of how good that can feel. And it's kind of like, so it's just really unique about.
Yeah. And he's made it really difficult for the article for the magazine, which I'm telling you is not completely written yet because I've just been pondering, in my life skills field. I work with hundreds and hundreds of people. I've talked with and interviewed, and even with the magazine, over 600 women in the last 3.5 years. So you just kind of stopped me in my tracks. I'm going, that is so interesting, like listening to your languaging, because that's one of the things I really like to key into. And and just all these things. And so when Erin popped it out, she lives like a horse. I said, that's it.
And I do agree with you. Like, I think because there is a very special dynamic with that too, because horses are herd animals. They want to be in the company of others, but at the same time, they live in the moment. If something bugs them, they're going to deal with it right then and there. They're not going to think about it and maybe deal with it in 2 days, right? Or hold a grudge. And I believe, like, you know, let's say if you're lucky, you have 100 years to live. That's like on the big scheme of things. Yeah. What do I want to do in that 100 years? Is it worth me worrying about something? Is it worth me really stewing, even if it's 2 days? Why? You know, does that propel me forward? No, it just makes me bitter inside. It just makes me go like, I don't like that. And I found this too, and I'm not saying that my life is all rainbows and unicorns, right? There's ups and downs, but I find that the best thing to pull me out of those down moments is to look at all the happy things, right? And I think that as humans, we like to focus on what's not good, you know, whether it be the red light. I got another red light today. I'm late. And I've had 3 red lights in a row. Well, what about the 4 green lights you had? Yeah. Right? You're not thinking about those. And I use that specific analogy because I have a girlfriend who, anytime I drive with her, she goes, every time I go through this town, I get every red light. And I go, well, maybe next time you should think about all the green lights and you might get those. Like, I don't know. Yeah. And so I think that whatever we focus on, whatever we put our energy into is what comes to us. And I'm not overly spiritual. I'm not overly religious. I kind of govern my internal thoughts by that whole idea of, does it feel right or doesn't it? And I don't want to focus on the stuff that doesn't feel right, because why would I want to cloud my body with things that affect me in a negative way? Yeah. So there's always going to be ups and downs. I was telling you this morning about kind of a frantic morning I had. But for me, I try to find the comedy in it. I try to find like, well, that was quite a fiasco, right? Not thinking about all of the things that went wrong, just thinking about, okay, so tomorrow I'm going to probably do things a little differently or whatever it might be.
And have you done a lot of Liberty training or work? Like, is that something near and dear to your heart?
I love it, but I haven't pursued a lot of it outside of the show. So that's one thing that's really great about Heartland is, as a horse person, I've been able to try almost every discipline under the sun on really incredibly trained horses. So I'm very fortunate for that. But I find in my own world, I like things, and this is similar to what I was just saying, I like things just to be easy. And I find that when you have to put in so much time, because to train Liberty horses, you have to do it every day for a matter of time. You have to, like, it's a big commitment to form that connection. And so for me, I just kind of want to hang out with my horses. I don't want to come home and be focusing on, okay, like I really have to work on this or I have to work on an agenda. And so I love just coming home. And one of my favorite things isn't even riding. It's just being in the field with my horses, just being present with them. And with my cows. Like, I probably spend more time in the evening with my cows than my horses, just because they're just like, there is something about just a cow chewing that is so relaxing. You're like, they're just hanging out. There's no worry in the world. And that's the feeling I want too, right? Yeah. So I think that for me, with my hectic schedule, if I came home and then all of a sudden had to think, okay, I want to accomplish this and the horse isn't listening and it's not working, then all of a sudden I'm back to, okay, this is work. This is something that I'm putting too much effort in.
It's not your release that you're
Yeah. So my animals are my release. They're I just want to hang out with you guys. I just want to, like, some people have friends. Oh, imagine that. I was little animals. But it's just it's a nice feeling just to be able to be present and to not have to think of anything other than that.
Well, it shows because, and I see why, people look up to you, because I think some of that has transferred into your character, would you say, through Amy as well on the show? And I'm just thankful to have kind of like
connected the dots,
figured it out, because we're all about making an impact in the world. And so just being enlightened as to kind of the impact you're making, and kind of impact that Heartland is making, I just find that really interesting. I like that. I like knowing that other people are out there adding goodness to the world, because we need that right now. There's so many struggles, so many unanswered questions, and people being off. And so I love knowing people have written in and said, I watch the show and I get my release and I've had healing and all the rest of it. And it's just a good thing. That's just a good thing. So
I hope you enjoyed part 1 of our conversation with Amber. We are going to have part 2 next week. However, if you would like early access, go to our show notes and you can join our newsletter, and you will have a link sent to you where you can access the podcast early. So hope you join us.